J.J. McCarthy is also injured. He hurt his ankle on Monday Night Football last night. He is unlikely to play Week 3 against the Cincinnati Bengals. That game is on CBS, so it is likely going to be Carson Wentz for the Vikings against Jake Browning of the Cincinnati Bengals. And then, of course, we had a couple of other injuries as well. Brock Purdy was out this past week. He's dealing with a toe injury, and Justin Fields is in concussion protocol for the Jets. All right, let's get our front office man, Rand Carthon, in here. Rand, we just ran through those list of injuries. We can kind of take our pick on where to start, but I guess we'll go to Jayden Daniels and the Commanders. They were in the NFC Championship game a season ago. They say it's not long-term, but how concerning could this be if he does have to miss a game here?
I mean, this is your franchise quarterback. This is the guy you took at number 2, and this is the guy that led you to the NFC Championship, like you said. And so it's always concerning if he has to miss multiple weeks. But you have a guy with a similar style of play, I'll say, in Marcus Mariota, that can still run the full complement of Cliff Kingsbury's offense. And so you can expect to see that. And then the other part of it as well is now you get to incorporate all the other pieces of the offense. So I expect Washington to come out and use a lot of those different ways to get guys like Deebo Samuel the ball and lean more heavily on this run game, and then use Marcus's legs outside of the pocket to extend plays and get those explosive shots down the field.
With a quarterback like Daniels, that you mentioned legs with Mariota and how they're kind of a similar quarterback, but when you're as dynamic as Daniels is, and it is a knee, again, the report is that it's not going to be a long-term issue, but how do you treat that if you're somebody making the decisions here to shut him down?
That's why you do it now. To give you an opportunity to allow him to heal, because you know the legs are a key part of his game, and then having his legs is what makes this offense so explosive. And so you rather treat it early versus allowing him to play at, say, 75 or 80% to make the knee injury worse than what it is. We've already seen the Washington organization do this before with RG3 back in the day, having him play on a knee that ultimately blew out and caused him to miss significant time. So they don't want to repeat this same thing with Jayden Daniels.
All right, so it's a sprained knee for Daniels. We knew what the injury was to Joe Burrow. The report this morning that it's likely going to be 3 months after having surgery on that toe that he's going to be out, which would bring Joe Burrow back toward the end of the regular season, best case scenario. We did just hear from Zach Taylor, who said he's likely going to need surgery. But Rand, what did you think about him not saying what the timetable is going to be?
I think they never really give you the full story or the full scope, publicly in most cases. I expect him to miss the entirety of the season. Speaking to a trainer that I know around the National Football League, and I was told last night the fact that the alleged Joe Burrow being allegedly seen leaving the stadium on a scooter and not being able to put pressure was quote unquote not good, was the diagnosis I got. And it also, the trainer also said that this is a 3 to 4 month. They're going to be on the optimistic side and say 3 months, and that we think he'll be back in 3 months. But I think it's going to take him out for the entirety of the season, especially if they're not in contention to compete for that 6th or 7th playoff spot, because I don't think they win the division if Joe Burrow is there. I still think it's Baltimore's division. And so if they're not in contention for that 6th and 7th spot come early December, when the 3-month window will be officially closed, I don't expect us to see Joe Burrow back at that point.
Wow. So mid-December is the 3-month window. You're thinking maybe closer to 4. That puts us into mid-January and the playoffs. The question is, do you think they can get there with Jake Browning, or should you try to go out and try to make some splash? I mean, we saw Kirk Cousins with his helmet on during the sideline the entire game last night. He's available.
Well, let's just start here. Let's just start from the business side. And it's been a struggle to get the Bengals organization to pay their top guys that are paying for them. For them to trade for a player like Kirk Cousins, you will have to not only get the Falcons to pay down some of the salary, but in order to get them to pay down some of the salary, you're going to have to give them higher draft compensation, which I don't think the Bengals are going to be willing to do, and I don't think the Bengals will be willing to take on Kirk Cousins' salary. I know for a fact that the people in the Bengals organization believe in Jake Browning. I think the players around in the locker room believe in Jake Browning. Jake Browning is 4-3 as a starting quarterback in this league right now, and I believe he will have them as a 7-win, 8-win, potentially 9-win team, just based off of the guys and the weapons he has around him. Now they're going to have to protect him, and they're going to have to make more of a commitment to run the ball, to at least have the running game as a part of a threat of their offense, instead of allowing Jake Browning to drop back and throw the ball 40-plus times a game.
The offensive line has gotten a lot of the hate, I guess I should say, on social media. Not necessarily the guys, but the fact that they don't have the guys to protect Joe Burrow. Is this a failure of the front office there?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a failure because they've attempted on so many levels to address the offensive line need. You can go all the way back to when Marvin Lewis was the coach. They spent a ton of draft capital in drafting these offensive linemen. Now, here is the caveat. You pay Joe Burrow, you pay Jamar Chase, you pay T. Higgins, and then you do this new extension with Trey Hendrickson. It's only so much money you can spend, so you can't go out and necessarily buy an offensive lineman in free agency, which now leads you to draft. And so you have to draft and develop these young guys, and you have to give these young guys time to grow, because the college game is so much more different than the NFL game in terms of offensive line play. Now, unfortunately, and this is where you can point your finger at the front office if you want, maybe they hadn't necessarily chosen the right guys. Mm-hmm. But it hadn't been for a lack of trying of them spending draft capital to address the offensive line.
This weekend, the Bengals play the Vikings, and the Vikings will likely not have J.J. McCarthy, who has put forth 1 great quarter and 7 bad quarters so far in his career for the Vikings. It appears as though it's going to be Carson Wentz. They're calling it a high ankle sprain for J.J. It's been a really tumultuous first couple of games. How do you think he's doing now? I mean, it's been a big week. He had a kid. He's got, the injury now. What's going on, and how do you keep his spirits up?
Well, I can tell you this: there's a lot of pressure on his significant other at home, having to take care of a newborn and a grown man who can't get around as well. So it's a lot of pressure on her. But for him, he just has to stay the course, and he has to take this as a learning opportunity, understand how to protect his body, how to protect himself when he's playing outside of the pocket or even in the pocket, knowing that you're going to get sacked. Sometimes it's okay. If you remember Peyton Manning, if he knew he was dead to rights, he would just go down and keep that hit off of his body. And these guys have to learn that, and this will be another part of it. But this allows him to grow from the mental side of the game, which you saw last season. With him missing most of the season last year, he was allowed to take the quote-unquote mental reps. But this is also why you go out and get a veteran in Carson Wentz. You go and get a veteran that has been there. And now with Carson Wentz starting, I believe this will be Kevin O'Connell's 7th different starting quarterback since he's been there as the head coach, which is a ton. But he has always won football games and always had them in the playoff hunt. So let's see if KOC can work his magic again with Carson Wentz.
Vikings, as of right now, a slight 2.5-point favorite because that one is in Minnesota. It's on CBS, 1 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday. Rand Carthon going to rejoin us in just a little bit. Let's run through some more news from the NFL, where you'll get it right here on HQ 24/7. News, highlights, scores, breaking news like the quarterback injuries so far this afternoon. Now,